The paper of the day is Lessons from Giant Scale Services. In this paper, we look at the basic model followed by large-scale services like Yahoo, Microsoft, AOL, Disney, etc. and examine three of the very challenging problems encountered by these sites. They focus on generalizing and abstracting the key challenges faced by giant-scale services and summarize the approaches used in practice. This is very much an experience paper. Most of these issues are not addressed in the academic literature, and most of the conclusions are in the form of principles and approaches rather than quantitative comparisons. Nonetheless, the challenges they explore will become increasingly important as the more services arise and an increasing fraction of civilization depends on their operation on a daily basis. Authors have defined several tools for designing and analyzing giant-scale services. Starting with the basic architectural model leads to novel ways to think about high availability, including the DQ principles and the use of harvest and yield. Experience has helped them develop several ways to control the impact of faults through combinations of replications and partitioning. These tools are useful for graceful degradation, disaster tolerance, and online evolution. Now, what is DQ principles? In the web services model, client may read queries to the servers and servers return data to reply those queries. The DQ principle is simple. Data per query times queries per second should be equal to constant. The intuition behind this principle is that the system's overall capacity tends to have a particular physical bottleneck, such as the total I/O bandwidth of all disks in the system, which is tied to data movement. The DQ value is the total amount of data that has to be moved per second on average, and it is thus bounded by the underlying physical limitation. At the high utilization level typical of giant scale systems, the DQ value approaches this limitation. Now, what is yield and harvest? Yield is the probability of completing a request, and harvest measures the completeness of the answers to the query. More formally, yield equals to queries completed divided by number of queries offered. Harvest is equal to data available divided by complete data. Yield provides a better metric of availability than simply uptime. Being down for 1 second at peak and off-peak times generates the same uptime, but vastly different yields because there might be an order of magnitude difference in load between the peak second and the minimum load second. Harvest provides a metric for consistency of how much of the database is reflected in the response. Due to faults or saturations, DQ will be reached sooner or later, and the system will have to make a choice between reducing yield, that is stop answering queries, or reducing harvest, that is stop giving answers based on incomplete data. The key insight here is that we can influence whether faults impact yield, harvest, or both. Here is how yield and harvest relate to DQ. When DQ is reached, we can either limit Q capacity to maintain D, or we can reduce D and increase Q. We can focus on harvest through admission control, which reduces Q, or on high yield through dynamic database reduction, which reduces D, and we can use a combination of the two. Now, here are some of the major lessons for developing giant scale services as per the paper. First, get the basics right. Start with a professional data center, layer 7 switches, and use symmetry to simplify analysis and management. Decide on your availability metrics. Everyone should agree on the goals and how to measure them daily. Remember that the harvest and yield are more useful than just uptime. Focused on mean time to recover at least as much as mean time between failures. Repair time is easier to affect for an evolving system and has just that impact. Understand load redirection during faults. Data replication is insufficient for preserving uptime under faults. You also need excess DQ. Graceful degradation is a critical part of a high availability strategy. Intelligent admission control and dynamic database reductions are the key tools for implementing the strategy. Use DQ analysis for all upgrades. Evaluate all proposed upgrades ahead of time and do capacity planning. Automate upgrades as much as possible. Develop and mostly automatic upgrade methods such as rolling upgrades. Using a staging area will reduce downtime, but be sure to have a fast, simple way to revert to the old version.